Ironically, the very first line in this game is a pretty apt description of itself. If there is a god in heaven, please let 2018 be the last year games use in medias res openings. None of them do it right. In medias res is supposed to be used to subvert the audience's expectations by making a later scene seem like something else due to lack of context that will be filled in on the journey back to that moment in time, revealing the actual truth of the scene. This is nothing more than a plane crash that occurs right after the tutorial level.
There are no parachutes!
Something you will never hear said on any chartered plane trip.
Get ready to jump! No fucking way! Jonah, we have to! Are you out of your fucking mind, Lara?
I'm with Jonah. How the hell is jumping out of a crashing plane going to make your situation better? On a side note, out of all the characters that survived the first game, why was Jonah chosen to be Lara's sidekick instead of Sam, Lara's best friend and whom she spent the whole game trying to save? Jonah was simply a cook on a boat they chartered, and has been dragged along ever since. Jonah and Miguel survived this. Who was responsible for making this harness? Lara is not a big girl, and has a hell of a time fastening it before the plane crashes. After that in medias res opening, the game cuts back to Lara in another in medias res situation as she's buried in a cave-in. Game devs seem to believe that if the game doesn't start off dialed up to 11, players will grow frightened and confused, believing they have been tricked into playing a farm sim. The front cover of this game literally has a sexy woman strapped with weapons. I think people know what they are buying into. You are using your leg as the fulcrum of the knife to move the stone. It should be slicing into your kneecap. Trinity set up a device to cause a cave-in if anyone else trespassed here, but only if they stepped on this one specific stone. I'm actually more curious if it was the stone that was the trigger or the device. Why did Lara take the hard way in if there was a cave entrance to this chamber right next to it? When did Dia de Muertos become a year-long celebration? Because that's the only way to explain why it's going on anytime someone visits Mexico in movies and games. It's sort of like how anytime a character travels to Louisiana, Mardi Gras is happening. Let's recap the reason Tomb Raider was rebooted to begin with. The first game was a critically acclaimed title that gamers the world over loved and teenage boys closed their bedroom doors before playing. It was followed by a series of repetitive sequels that refused to budge an inch when it came to innovating outside of increased boob polygons, culminating in a game where the devs killed Lara off so they wouldn't have to make any more games about her, only to be forced to make more. So they made even more tired sequels and remakes. Fast forward to now, and it's starting to feel like we're back in that cycle, with a series stuck in a rut with no idea how to improve. Because this game is identical to Rise, which is identical to 2013's Tomb Raider. At this rate, we are going to need another reboot.
Then chase the heart of the serpent to the silver-crowned mountain.
I'm pretty certain Incans had words for clouds and would not use silver crowned as a description, but their ancient civilization must have taken one look at the smallpox and cholera-infested Spaniards, predicted their demise, and decided to go out flipping the bird to their pale-faced conquerors by rewriting all their signage.
Precession. The Earth tilts, so over time these stars appear in a different place on the horizon. Important if you're navigating by the night sky.
Okay.
In the Maya calendar, that's a 2,000-year difference. Back then, the heart of the serpent set directly to the west.
So, that's why it's in Peru, not Brazil.
This is that scene where the protagonist gets to prove how smart they are by making a discovery that the villains missed, but I'm willing to wager that an organization as powerful as Trinity would hire a few astronomers and historians who could piece together that the coordinates they were searching for were now wrong due to precession, a well understood and accounted for phenomenon. Also, this turns out to be hilariously wrong since Trinity is already in Peru and in control of the hidden city.
Trinity has been looking in the wrong place.
Doctor, we found him.
Yes. Show me.
Announce that even louder so that everyone might hear. Here's a hint for evil, treasure-seeking organizations. If you see a giant skull on a mountainside, it's a safe bet that there is treasure nearby. This seems like pretty obvious information, but damn if no villain can ever figure it out. It should be noted that this game allows you to turn ledge paint off. It took a few years and many mentions in videos, but it seems like devs are finally listening. That being said, you should leave it on because the platforming is not as tight as it was in the previous game and you will miss many jumps even when you know what you're jumping at. This series has always been king of Meth Alley when it comes to creating new ways to have Lara crawl through a narrow crevice loading gate, but they dialed it up to 10 and broke off the knob for this one. From underwater crevices where she gets her ass stuck, to ones full of bodies where she gets her ass stuck, to just general old crevices where she gets her ass stuck. It would actually be impressive if they were a bit more subtle. Eels do not act like boa constrictors and try to constrict their prey. They have mouths full of sharp teeth for a reason. Something has seemed oddly familiar about this game. An emphasis on underwater sections, Lara rooting in the mud and becoming a dirty archaeologist as a selling point. Hold on a minute, this is Tomb Raider Underworld all over again. We've come full circle, because that was the last tired game in the old series that required Crystal Dynamics to reboot the whole mess. The Incans stuck a dagger that can end the world inside of a cave and seemed to think that was adequate protection. Taking this dagger sets off a chain of calamities, but the dagger is also used to stop the calamities once started. An object was somehow created that creates and then solves its own problem, then is set aside until someone else comes along and picks it up. This is like one of those useless machines where its only function once turned on is to turn itself off. Trinity is essentially what the Salvation Army would be if they started taking that whole army part of their name seriously. So that begs the question of how an Orthodox Christian secret society that seeks to remake the world reconciles their beliefs with the fact that the object they need to accomplish their goal is one from a pagan faith.
It never occurred to me that you would just take. But without the box, the apocalypse.
I would like to point out that you didn't have the silver box of Ixchel either, and we're planning to take the dagger tonight anyways.
The death of the sun.
I don't care what ancient magic we are dealing with here, nothing's killing the sun or bringing it back to life. And later we find out that it's just an eclipse. You know, that thing you need to use little cardboard glasses to look at since it's not nearly as impressive as fiction leads you to believe, and is entirely localized to a very specific spot of the planet. I'm just going to leave you here even though it's obvious you will continue getting in my way. You already made the mistake of letting her live at the end of the last game. I guess Uncharted stole so much from Tomb Raider that they felt compelled to return the favor, because they reused the same action set piece of Lara staying just ahead of some danger behind her 4 separate times during the game.
I failed. Worse.
What do you mean?
Dominguez. He has the dagger. I lost it. After everything that my father went through, I gave Trinity exactly what they wanted.
Lara was more interesting in the old games. She showed more emotion back when her face had fewer polygons than her breasts.
Cloudy Mountain. If we find it, how do we know we have the right one?
Hate to interrupt you, Jonah, but Lara's found 2 hidden cities on much less than what she has to go on right now.
Okay. But how do we really know?
It really shouldn't be that hard to sell Jonah on this. After all, he was there the last 2 times all sorts of supernatural stuff went down.
Hey, I might have something over here.
You better take a look at this cliché. The pilot not only survives getting hit in the face by a baseball-sized hailstone, but he, along with Jonah and Lara, survived the plane breaking apart in midair and crashing in the jungle. Congratulations, you swept the bronze medal in the Imagination Olympics with this reuse of an earlier jump scare. The pilot survived the hailstone and the crash just so he could become jaguar food in the jungle. Those jaguars just ate most of a male human, and they are not going to be hungry for a while. So there's no reason to throw away their first meal to try to kill Lara. You can't even make the joke about Lara having more meat on her, since this Lara is strictly B-cup material. If you want to tone down the amount of combat in favor of more exploration and puzzles in your game, that is perfectly fine. However, when the skill tree is entirely devoted to improving combat abilities, I'm left feeling like the Internet Navy SEAL after a long night of drinking and imagining scenarios where all of my enemies cower before my combat prowess. Animals don't do this, just aliens. And only if you are Sigourney Weaver.
Do you know what happened to Miguel?
He didn't make it.
Considering you and Miguel were strapped in next to each other when the plane broke in half, you should have crashed in the same location and preferably died together.
What's wrong with your arm?
Some sort of parasite.
Parasitic worm infections take days to weeks to reach the visible symptoms stage. You can check WebMD out yourself if you don't believe me. Don't linger there too long though, since no matter the symptoms, that site always seems to suggest you have cancer. In fact, Jonah probably has cancer according to WebMD. That jaguar ate Miguel and the other jaguar that Lara killed. It should not be hungry. Animals don't hunt when they're full.
Let me take a look at that.
After having her back mauled by a jaguar, it took Jonah until nightfall to start applying first aid. They were in the Amazon, a place notorious for terrible infections.
You know, with everything we've been through recently, I've been thinking about my brother.
None of the very similar situations Jonah has been on with Lara have ever made him think of his brother. Not buying it, game. It's far too late to start developing his character.
I miss him.
I know. My parents. I miss them too.
Very smooth, Lara. Jonah is opening up to you about feeling guilty over not being able to save his brother, and you use that to bring it back around to yourself, complete with a flashback to your childhood on the day your father was murdered.
To claim her treasure, the adventurer Lara Croft must outwit the king.
Child plays a game of what will eventually become their actual profession cliché.
Reach the forbidden tomb and solve the mystery of the White Queen.
You know, this is reminding me of something.
Push down on their bases to release the doors that may take you below or lead you into the shrine of the Silver Monkey.
Actually, I think Legend of the Hidden Temple probably inspired the entire Tomb Raider series. Lara's goal is to sneak into the room her father keeps her mother's things locked up inside. So why go outside in the first place? Shouldn't she be planning this scheme from her bedroom instead of the courtyard, requiring her to climb over the roof and nearly die? All Richard was keeping in this room was his dead wife's possessions. Nothing actually valuable. A simple deadbolt would suffice. Instead, Mr. Croft installed a locking mechanism that includes giant translucent globes, stone statues, sliding ladders, a bat glider, and finally light beams to unlock it.
Please, for goodness sake, you've got to understand. This is probably the most important one I've arrived at. Well, okay, what do? I have to...
Dad?
Even though Lara clearly heard her father yelling at someone in an argument right before the gunshot, Lara spent the next dozen years believing he killed himself until it was finally revealed that Trinity was behind it. When wrestling over a gun, doing it from the business end puts you at considerable disadvantage. I'm at a loss to understand why this guy didn't just hold down the trigger.
How'd you get so deep into the jungle? You lose your tour group or something?
Peru's mandatory English lessons for the citizens is really starting to pay off. I can barely hear even a trace of accent, outside of the Midwestern American one I heard from a few NPC characters. The very first person they meet in town is perfectly willing to help strangers, has clues on where Lara needs to go next, and even becomes a love interest for Jonah. I would complain that the game is rushing character development, but this is a series that felt it needed 3 games to tell the origin story of Lara Croft that mostly consists of her being beaten to a pulp each game while demanding she grow as a person within the next 10 lashes.
So, what are you here for exactly?
Well, we were following a riddle when our plane went down.
You mean it crashed?
Yeah.
And you just walked out of the crash?
Even Abby can't believe that shit about the plane crash.
Well, you know, it was cruising pretty low.
You were flying above mountains right before the crash.
Lara,
What?
Abby said not to break anything.
Archaeology students normally have a great deal of respect for ruins and artifacts. There's probably good reason Lara has never been called Dr. Croft in any of these games.
This must lead to the next clue.
Go. I'll stay here. See what else I can find.
Jonah is perfectly fine being shoved to the side every time the plot calls for action. He has zero agency and is just there to act on whatever Lara wants to do. I guess some would call this progress, but I just call it bad writing no matter which gender is getting shoved into the kitchen. Trinity not only already knew where Paititi is, but they control the damn place, and one of Dominguez's goals is to protect it from the outside world. Yet they didn't bother destroying this mural that tells one how to find Paititi. The Inca built this elaborate altar to leave behind the knowledge of how to hang a man from a tree after shooting him with an arrow. Strange what secrets they chose to pass down.
I may know another way around.
If you know another way around, these challenges are pointless, and you could have just gone that way to begin with. It also means the ancient city of Paititi should have been found by these villagers a long time ago. Centuries in the jungle with zero maintenance and this thing is still spinning. It's even more impressive when you remember that the Inca never invented wheels. Kid, you're a human, not a wild dog that can only tug on the restraint or chew your leg off. Just unwind the rope.
Who are you? What's your purpose here?
A civilization of Incans who have remained hidden from the rest of the world speak perfect English. Whoa, she did not consent to that. It's also pointless because they are a stone's throw from the hidden city.
You will risk it simply to stop the cult.
I could swear I played a Tomb Raider game about a hidden city controlled by a deranged cult not long ago. Once again, we find ourselves in a hidden city that would have been easily found by modern technology. How many lost cities are left for adventure games to discover?
When the catastrophes come, the god Kukulkan must be sacrificed to power the sun. Otherwise, the world dies.
Sacrifice a god?
The sacrifice is my duty. But this cult leader will take my place and attempt to become the god.
That doesn't sound so much like a cult, and more like the people just chose someone else to be in charge of their faith. Dominguez, who also leads Trinity, the Christian secret society, moonlights as the cult leader of a bunch of Incans. He's gonna have one hell of a time explaining that at confession.
They already call him Kukulkan, but his real name is Amaru. He was born here, but raised, lied to, by outsiders.
How does one go from being born into a tribal society with no contact with the outside world to leading a secret organization with power all over the globe? He must have crushed every knowledge gap he encountered.
I don't think anything could have prepared me for this place.
Besides the 2 other times you discovered a hidden city keeping mysterious power secret, this isn't even your first cult.
If you survive, you can find your way back through the old irrigation system.
Maybe you could simply tell her where the water supply opening is then, because it connects directly to the Silver Snake Room without all the climbing and death traps. The cult didn't do anything to Naratu earlier when they confronted her, but they do arrest her son not long afterward for being part of the resistance. If they knew he was part of it, then they had to know who Naratu is as well. I mean, she's the former queen.
What's that? This is a key. It looks like it belonged to the mountain temple.
We'll eventually find out that Unuratu has trained her whole life to stop the calamities from happening with a ritual. That's why it's so weird that she didn't know about the snake key until Lara brought it to her attention. This key is needed to get the silver box of Ixchel, which is necessary to stop the sun from dying. You should probably silently mouth, "Shoot the bastards," instead. There's no reason to allow yourself to be captured. All you succeeded in doing was taking your son's place as a prisoner. I'm not sure what the story is behind these things. Supposedly they are an ancient civilization that created the silver box and the knife, but I have no idea why they turned into monsters. This game feels like it's going down a checklist of things it has to do in order to be called a Tomb Raider game. And wouldn't you know it, right there in the middle is introduce cursed humans. You have to wonder how the females of this underground society managed to keep their banging figures when the males had devolved into Morlocks. What would Lara do without all these helpful murals she always seems to find? This is the 4th or 5th time in this game that she's found one, and the same thing was done in the past 2 games.
I'm confident I can deal with any rebel I meet.
Well said.
Even though none of the cultists are women or have British accents, they are willing to buy Lara dressed up as one.
Everything I've ever done has been for Paititi. I have lived the outside world and I have seen what's to come. Every day it encroaches. Paititi will not survive its invasion. Everything we are will be taken or destroyed.
So your solution was to invade Paititi with foreigners and take it over while subverting its ancient traditions and forcing everyone to speak English? Really doesn't sound like you were preserving much. And what makes you think it is going to be discovered now, when it has remained hidden inexplicably for all these years?
Well, then we must fight for it together, according to the will of its people.
By restoring the sun. That will only ensure Paititi's safety for a moment.
Without the sun, I'm pretty certain Paititi is screwed anyways.
The box is gone. A missionary, Andres Lopez. He stole it 400 years ago.
Well, that raises the question of why you're wasting your time here. Shouldn't you be looking for leads on the box's current whereabouts instead of cosplaying Cusco from Emperor's New Groove? Impressive sell there, keeping Unuratu in. There's an opening at the top Lara just climbs over and a wall full of loose stones that can be made short work of to get out.
This one grounds my past. It symbolizes Chimchichica, the last true emperor of Paititi. His tomb is in the upper district.
Can you take me there?
They're all over that tomb. If there's anything there, they would no doubt have found it already.
I'd like to point out that the box had all this security, and the knife that can end the world was just shoved in a cave. Kind of think it should have been the other way around.
In here!
That arrow came from the side, while Unuratu is directly below and in front of Lara.
This is Commander Rourke. We've got a lead on the box. Send a team for Croft.
I mean, I could probably shoot her myself right now, but reasons. Not sure how that was a miss. Normally, minigun plus slow-moving target equals death.
Don't move.
Don't try me.
Was that an actual character moment? Hot damn, it only took 3 games to have 1. An attack chopper, an APC, and all of Rourke's men couldn't land a single shot on Lara, even in an ambush.
Sometimes I feel like I have to keep going, and if I don't, then I'll just let everyone down.
This game is now recycling scenes from the first game, such as Lara falling into water and her determination forcing her to keep going. Congratulations, Lara. You just destroyed an oil field in the middle of a pristine jungle, ensuring the entire area will be polluted for years to come.
It's not mine. The clue was left by a 17th century missionary, Andrea Lopez, a Jesuit. The serpent in the chalice is a symbol of St. John. We're looking for a Christian holy site.
It took you that long to figure that out even after hearing the box was stolen by a Christian missionary.
There's a whole mural under here.
Isn't there always? Goddamn, come up with a different way of giving Lara clues.
Only the hands of the righteous one may seize destiny from mine.
I guess it's you then.
Hardly. You were way more innocent than Lara. She has the blood of hundreds on her hands, including the innocents that died during the tsunami she caused.
He sabotaged every clue.
All to keep this box from Trinity.
And the people of Paititi.
Lopez would have been better off destroying every clue. All he did was alter dates here and there when completely erasing them would have worked much better.
Release him, and I will give you the box.
That's 2 games in a row now where Jonah has only served as a hostage to make Lara do what the villain wants.
He refused to see the potential for destruction in his work. He had to be stopped.
You had him killed.
Lara acts like Dominguez having her father killed is a big reveal, despite Anna telling her back in the last game that Trinity killed Richard. With Dominguez being the head of Trinity, you'd think Lara could put 2 and 2 together.
He was going to lead the public to Paititi. Everything I love, everything I fought for,
Lara's dad was driven by a search for immortality as opposed to Paititi. Immortality is never mentioned in this game as far as I can tell. Of course it's possible Richard was researching both, but let's consider how big of a contrivance this was. Richard was not only researching immortality, but he knew Trinity was involved, but also wanted to find Paititi, which by sheer coincidence not only has a connection to Trinity, but happens to be directly connected to the head of Trinity, who is 100% obsessed with keeping the place a secret. And as far as I can tell, Richard knew nothing about Trinity being connected to Paititi.
You're a low, selfish, murdering coward.
And you, Lara? How many lives have you ended?
You know what? Screw the whole, well, how many lives have you ended rebuttal from villains. You are a mass murdering evil organization planning to warp reality and enslave the world. Villains like that should not try taking the moral high ground against someone who kills only in self-defense. How did Jonah even get in their helicopter without being shot? Last we saw him, he knocked over a Trinity soldier, then ran ahead. I've largely ignored the terrible scene transitions in this game, but here at the end, I'm sick of being generous. Time after time, when Lara is with Jonah, the screen will cut to black, then start right into an action set piece without adequately explaining where Jonah went. This entire town is destroyed by a mudslide, but Jonah and his girlfriend are fine because they walk 10 feet to the side while Lara has to outrun a mud flow down a mountain.
It's Trinity. All the way back, as far as I can remember, it's always been them.
Yeah, all the way back in the last game where they were first introduced. I kinda feel this is what it'd be like to cosplay as Lara Croft at a convention.
The High Council's been slaughtered! Commander Rourke, we need your orders!
And that's it. All the heads at Trinity, the High Council, are dead. In one moment, no visuals, entire evil organization destroyed off screen. They really wanted to get that out of the way for future games. Trinity has always felt pointless, but this is the moment they feel unwanted. Color me unimpressed with the supposed power of the gods. Dominguez claimed it would allow him to reshape the world or relight the sun, but you'd never guess that while fighting him, since he goes down to a few well-placed bullets. So the magic dagger gave Lara the power of her own memory? For just a moment, I allowed myself to believe they were going to pull a last revelation and kill Lara off again. Because damn if they don't seem tired of making games about her already. But nah, they couldn't even do that. I know that box looks good in your collection, Lara, but they are going to need that again eventually. That whole sun dying out thing happens every few centuries. What was the plot of this game again? Something about Lara asking herself if killing hundreds of people while destroying countless works of antiquity was a bad thing? By the end of the game, it seems to have reached the conclusion that it isn't.
Find the key, and it may unlock the tombs of the ancient kings.